If you're hearing this, don't go into the pines. I thought it was just an animal. It wasn't. My name is Ranger Cole Harding, and I come from a quiet town in northern Oregon, Clearvale. Folks there know me as the ranger who spent almost 10 years patrolling the timberland, hiking the backcountry, and guiding lost hikers home. I've seen injuries, rescues, even the remains of those who didn't make it out. But nothing prepared me for what I encountered during a single October hunting trip. I can still feel my boots pounding the ground, pine needles crunching beneath every step. My chest burned as my breath came ragged and shallow, misty clouds vanishing into the night air. Behind me, something thundered through the trees, fast, deliberate, each movement heavier than any bear or elk I'd ever heard. I didn't dare look back, because part of me knew that if I saw it, if I locked eyes with whatever it would be the last thing I'd ever see. The forest wasn't silent. It was alive with sound. Branches whipped past, snapping under the weight of something that shouldn't have been there. The forest felt tighter, like it was closing in, each trunk leaning closer, each shadow stretching longer. My ears caught everything, the thundering of pursuit, the pounding in my chest, the breaking of limbs that sounded too intentional to be mere chance. I ran. My radio bounced uselessly against my chest, the static drowned out by the sound of my own pulse. The air was sharp with cold, carrying the resin scent of pine mixed with something else, an acrid metallic tang that made my stomach twist. The trees seemed endless, the path vanishing under the press of night. Every instinct screamed at me to keep moving, to not let it catch me. And then, silence. I stopped. My breath heaved out of me in clouds, loud against the stillness. No movement, no footsteps. Just the eerie quiet of the forest holding its breath. My eyes darted from trunk to trunk, desperate to pierce the dark. I couldn't see it, but I felt it, close, watching. Then came the sound I'll never forget. Knuckles scraping bark, slow, deliberate, as if something with hands was dragging itself down the side of a tree. Not claws tearing randomly, not an animal That was the night my hunting trip ended and my nightmare began. If you're hearing this now, if you're still with me, you need to subscribe to MindFuel and stay close, because every chapter that follows will reveal more than the last. Each time you come back, I'll show you exactly what I saw, step by step, as I uncover what stalked me in the pines. And trust me, you'll want to know before you ever set foot in the forest again. I wasn't supposed to be afraid that morning. This was meant to be simple, a short hunting trip, just me, my rifle, and the wide open quiet of the backcountry. I'd scouted Pine Ridge Hollow on maps before, but I'd never set foot there. The old-growth pines were rumored to hold some of the biggest elk in the region, and that was all the reason I needed. The road in was rugged, a logging path long forgotten, weaving through thickets that swallowed the sunlight. By the time I parked and shouldered my pack, the world felt different, heavier somehow. The canopy above was dense, blotting out the dawn and plunging the forest into a muted gray. Usually, when you step into woods that deep, you're greeted by sound, birds darting from branch to branch, the chatter of squirrels, the rustle of smaller things in the brush. But here, nothing. No chirps, no wings beating overhead. Just my boots on needles and the faint creak of branches swaying. The kind of silence that doesn't settle, it presses. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the season, maybe a shift in migration. But part of me knew. This wasn't right. A forest that vast shouldn't feel empty. A mile in, I stopped at a stand of pines. That's when I saw them. Scratches, deep grooves running vertically along the trunk. At first I thought bear. We see that sometimes, black bears marking territory, stripping bark. But these weren't like that. The cuts were spaced unevenly, each gouge wider than the span of my fingers, and higher, much higher than a black bear could reach, even standing on hind legs. I craned my neck, following the marks up the trunk. They stretched so far overhead it made me dizzy, No known animal could have made them. Not out here. Not like that. I brushed my hand across the grooves. The edges were fresh, splinters sharp. Whatever made them. By late afternoon, I'd hiked further than I'd intended. The forest thickened into a cathedral of trunks, their crowns locked tight, blotting out the sky. I found a clearing just wide enough for my tent, with a ring of stones that looked like it had been used for fire long before I came along. It felt prepared, like I was following someone else's steps. I dropped my pack, set up the tent, and went about gathering wood. That's when I heard it. Tap. I paused, head tilting toward the sound. Somewhere in the trees, sharp and deliberate. At first I thought, woodpecker. They're common enough. But this wasn't the stuttering drum of a beak. This was a single knock, then silence. I went back to stacking branches. Tap. This time, it came from another tree, closer. I froze, listening. Tap. Tap. The rhythm moved, trunk to trunk, circling the clearing. Too heavy to be random, too measured to be wind. I whispered under my breath, convincing myself, woodpecker, had to be. But the way it shifted, slow and steady, made the hair on my arms stand up. As dusk swallowed the clearing, I lit a fire. The flames crackled, snapping across the wood. The light should have been comforting, but it only made the darkness beyond it seem thicker. I sat close, my rifle leaning against a log, my back hunched against the night. That's when it happened. A pine cone shot out from the tree line and landed square in the fire. Sparks burst upward. I flinched back, eyes searching the shadows. My mind scrambled for explanations. Squirrel dropping it from a branch? Maybe. But no. I'd seen the arc. It had been thrown. I listened hard, the fire hissing as it consumed the cone. And that's when I heard it, at the very edge of the clearing. Not laughter, not words. Breathing, slow, ragged, deliberate. Each exhale like air escaping through clenched teeth. Each inhale drawn too long, too heavy, as though whoever or whatever it was wanted me to hear it. I held my breath, afraid even the smallest sound from me would invite it closer. My hand slid toward my rifle, fingers trembling against the stock. The fire cracked again. The breathing stopped, but my nerves didn't. My skin crawled with the certainty that whatever had been at the edge of the clearing was still there, watching. I couldn't just sit by the fire and wait. Against my better judgment, I grabbed my flashlight, steadied my hand, and stepped beyond the circle of light. The forest swallowed me instantly. My beam cut a narrow tunnel through the dark, illuminating bark, roots, and the drifting haze of my own breath. I moved slowly, ears straining for the faintest crack of a twig. That's when I saw it. On the trunk of a pine, not far from camp, was a handprint. Not an impression in the dirt, on the tree itself. The outline was smeared dark, 5 long fingers stretched unnaturally wide. But what froze me wasn't the length. It was the absence of a palm. Just 5 digits, pressed into bark, as if something with only fingers had gripped the tree. I reached out, hovering my hand beside it. My fingers didn't even span half the length. Whatever made that mark wasn't human. Before I could process it, a sound cracked overhead, branches groaning under weight, directly above me. I whipped the flashlight upward. For a split second, the beam caught something pale clinging to the trunk, 40 feet high. Not perched on a limb, not wrapped around the trunk like a bear. It moved vertically, stretched long, clinging to the bark with those same impossible fingers. The light bounced off its skin, too pale for any creature of the forest, too long where its limbs bent. Its body twisted unnaturally, crawling spider-like into the canopy. I stumbled backward, my flashlight shaking so badly the beam fractured into the dark. My boots slipped in the needles as I ran, lungs burning, crashing through underbrush until I burst back into the clearing. Relief washed over me for only a second, until I saw my camp. Everything was wrong. My pack wasn't where I'd left it. The tent flap was unzipped. My rations had been pulled out and lined neatly beside the fire pit. My canteen sat upright on a log. My gear hadn't been stolen, it had been rearranged. Someone, or something, had gone through my belongings while I was in the trees. I stood frozen, the flashlight quivering in my hand, the fire spitting weak embers. The forest. I told myself I had to leave. Whatever game was being played out there, I wasn't going to be part of it. I doused the fire, strapped on my pack, and set off the way I'd come in. For the first 100 yards, nothing happened. Just the crunch of my boots on the forest floor, the sway of my rifle on my shoulder. But then, off to my right, knock. One sharp strike against wood. I froze, waited. Nothing followed. I kept walking, faster now, heart climbing into my throat. Knock. This time to the left. I turned, flashlight catching only endless columns of trees. The sound hadn't followed me randomly, it was guiding me. Every direction I tried, north, west, back toward the road, the knocks came again, echoing tree to tree, forcing me deeper into the pines. I wasn't walking the path I chose, I was being herded. The deeper I went, the stranger it became. My nerves frayed to threads. At one point I stopped to catch my breath, knees bent, palms on my thighs. And that's when I noticed the prints. My own boot prints. They circled the clearing where I stood, looping, weaving in patterns I hadn't walked. Perfect impressions of my tread, pressed into the needles, as though something had been following in my exact steps. Not behind me, not beside me, mimicking me. I bent low, running my hand over one of the prints, my skin crawling. The edges were sharp, fresh, made minutes ago, by me, or by something wearing my trail like a mask. I couldn't stand still any longer. I pushed forward, weaving through underbrush, my light trembling over roots and trunks. The day began to bleed into dusk, the forest dimming with it, and every tree seemed to lean closer. Shadows stretched into impossible shapes, and then, movement. Ahead, not 30 yards away, something slid between the trunks. A figure, tall, long-limbed. My beam caught it only for an instant, but it was enough. Its arms swung too low, bending backwards at the joints, elbows jutting unnaturally. Its hands dragged along the ground, long fingers curling through the needles as it moved. It didn't walk like a man. It drifted, each step jerking, uneven, as though it wasn't used to wearing a body. By the time the last of the daylight drained away, I couldn't take another step. My legs shook, my breath came ragged, and my thoughts blurred at the edges. I knew stopping was dangerous, but exhaustion pinned me down harder than fear ever could. I found a hollow near the base of a pine, just wide enough to curl up inside. No fire this time, no light. Just the thin nylon of my tent and the false comfort of fabric between me and the dark. My rifle lay beside me, within reach, the way I always slept when I was deep in the backcountry. Sleep didn't come easy, but it came, broken, shallow, restless. And then I woke. Something was wrong. The earth beneath my cheek was disturbed, softer than when I'd laid down. I turned my head slowly, every muscle stiff, and saw it. 2 prints in the dirt. Not boots, not paws, hands. Pressed into the soil inches from my face. Long fingers spread unnaturally wide, each groove deep as if the weight behind them was unbearable. No palm, just those stretched digits sinking into the earth, pointing straight at me. I recoiled, heart thundering, eyes darting to my side where my rifle should have been. Empty. Gone. I bolted upright, panic igniting every nerve. That's when I heard it. Tap. A sound carrying through the trees. Metallic. Wrong. I staggered out of the tent, scanning the forest. There, at the edge of the gloom, stood the figure. Pale, towering, limbs hanging long. In its hands, my rifle. Not cradled like a man would hold it, but upside down by the barrel, as if it had no understanding of what it was. It raised the weapon slowly and tapped the stock against the trunk of a pine. Once, twice, deliberate, like it was calling me closer. I tried to rise, to put distance between us, but as I stood, it moved too. Not toward me, no. It mimicked me. When I leaned, it leaned. When I shifted weight to my right foot, it did the same. Grotesque arms bending backward, joints jerking as if learning how to stand. It tilted its head, copying the angle of mine, movements too precise, too rehearsed. It wasn't just watching me anymore. I didn't wait to see what it would do next. Instinct surged through me, and I ran. I tore through the pines, crashing over roots, ducking low branches, my chest burning with each desperate breath. My only thought was distance, put space between me and that thing holding my rifle like a toy. But no matter how far I pushed, the forest warped around me. The trees stretched taller, denser, pressing in like a cage. Every direction I tried bled into the same path, and before long, my stomach dropped with the realization. I was back at my camp, the tent, the fire pit, the rearranged gear. I was running in circles, trapped in a maze of endless pines. Then the sounds began again. At first, just the knocking, sharp strikes against bark. But it grew louder, heavier, until the forest shook with it. Slap, slap, slap. Not one rhythm now, but many. Dozens of hands striking trees, echoing from every direction. I spun, flashlight jerking across trunks, and for the first time I saw shadows moving between the beams. Not a single figure, not two, more. Flickering silhouettes stretched impossibly long, limbs bending the wrong way, pale fingers grazing bark as they shifted just beyond the edge of light. Panic tore through me. I bolted again, legs numb, lungs searing. My boots hammered the earth until I tripped. The ground rushed up, needles stabbing into my palms. My flashlight flew from my grip, beam rolling wild across the forest floor. And then I heard it. The crunch of pine needles. Not from footsteps, from crawling. Dozens of hands dragging closer. Fingers tearing into the soil, scraping bark, pressing into the earth. The sound surrounded me, circling, closing in from every side. I lay frozen, cheek pressed to the ground, watching as the shadows stretched longer, their movements jagged, unnatural, their reach growing closer and closer. The pines had become a prison, and I was no longer just being hunted. I was being claimed. I don't remember how the chase ended. The last thing I recall was the sound of those hands closing in, dragging through needles, scraping wood, pressing against the earth around me. My vision narrowed, the edges going black, and then nothing. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. Pale sunlight broke through the canopy, warming the clearing. I was lying on my side, right where my camp had been. My tent stood intact. My rations were neatly stacked again, and my rifle, clean, untouched, lay exactly where I'd placed it the night before. It was as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. My legs trembled as I stood. I didn't bother packing properly. I slung my gear half-fastened over my shoulder and walked, then jogged, then ran until I reached the trailhead. Every step out of those woods felt like pushing against invisible eyes, watching me leave, letting me go. I never looked back. I drove until the forest was a smear in the rear view, until Clearvale's familiar rooftops broke the horizon. Home had never felt safer, yet never so fragile. For a while, I convinced myself I'd left it behind, that maybe exhaustion, hunger, fear had twisted my senses. Maybe I'd imagined the rearranged gear, the handprints, the pale figures among the pines. But last night, I woke to a sound outside my house. At first faint, then sharper. Knock on the tree just beyond my window, and then slower, closer. The scrape of knuckles dragging across bark. I thought I'd escaped, but it still knows me. Fade to black. Knuckles rasp against wood, long, slow. The sound of something with hands.